Mordred the Warlock and his armies lay siege to Camelot with monstrous elephants. Uther Pendragon, the king of the Britons, watches as his men are disintegrated. He gives his brother Vortigern his crown as he prepares to go to battle. Uther infiltrates Mordred's lair during the attack, finds Mordred, and beheads him with the help of a unique sword forged by Merlin with the help of the mage, displacing the attackers conjured by the power of Mordred's magic. Uther saves Camelot this time. They burn their dead. Uther's brother Vortigern, who covets the throne and is responsible for purging the mage, is rebuked by Uther to stop all persecutions. Vortigern then orchestrates a coup, taking his wife Elsa to the Siren's cave as a sacrifice. Stabbing her, he cries, and is then rewarded with the power to become a demon knight. During the coup, Uther tries to stage an escape for his wife, but Vortigern, now the demon knight, kills Uther's wife Igraine. She falls from a boat into the river as Arthur watches. Uther's son Arthur escapes by boat and ends up in Londinium. Taken in by prostitutes at a riverbank, he is bullied by everyone. As Vortigern becomes king, Arthur grows up on the streets, watching street fighters train, making money, lots of it. He starts his own gang, protects the prostitutes, and joins the street fighters, becoming a tough and sophisticated minor chieftain. However, Arthur is plagued by nightmares of the night his parents died, without seeing who attacked them. Vortigern rules Britain cruelly and dedicates resources to building a tower near the castle. When the water surrounding the castle recedes, revealing a sword in a stone, soldiers fight to remove it. Vortigern then goes back to the Siren, who demands another sacrifice of people he loves deeply. At Arthur's prostitute house, soldiers burst in looking for an assailant. He stops them. When an aggressive sergeant threatens Arthur, Sergeant Jack walks in, rebuking the sergeant. Knowing Arthur well, he asks him nicely about a wounded assailant, Goosefat Bill, a member of the Resistance fighting for a rumoured legendary Born King. They had ambushed the king's men on a barge. Arthur invites Jack to look around. As Jack looks around himself, he finds a man bleeding. Arthur turns him in, hearing that people who harbour such an assailant will be treated as assailants themselves. On finding the assailant, General Jack angrily calls a private meeting with Arthur and his gang, telling them their names keep coming up in his blackleg sergeant circles. He demands to hear the story about a girl called Lucy, a Viking called Greybeard, and the Resistance graffiti dirtying the streets. Arthur then tells his story. He woke up, went downstairs and discovered Lucy was missing. Then he and his gang took care of business, did some housekeeping. Then they heard Chinese George had some trouble last night with the Vikings. On their way to George's street fight school, they saw Flat-Nosed Mike trying to smuggle furs without paying commission. Mike bribes them. Sergeant Jack asks about the Resistance graffiti propagated by Backleg's son, Blue Boy. Arthur catches Blue Boy and his gang painting graffiti on a street wall. Backleg, his dad, asks him what he was doing. Blue Boy informs them the legendary Born King is coming back. The gangs are confused. Backleg takes his son away, telling him if he gets caught by the soldiers, he is dead, and if they can catch them, the soldiers could already know he did it. Arthur demands to go back to the Kung Fu George story with the Vikings. Chinese George informs Arthur the Vikings' leader, Greybeard, started throwing his weight around with Lucy. Greybeard had his way with prostitute Lucy and was leaving without paying for services. Greybeard had on the same furs Flat-Nosed Mike was trying to smuggle. Arthur and his gang attacked the Vikings and cut off Greybeard's beard. He ends his story saying he solved the smuggling problem, stopped Blue Boy's graffiti ring, and his territory is at peace. Sergeant Jack informs him he had his calculations wrong. Greybeard and the Vikings are under the protection of the king. His name has entered the circles of the king and he can't touch him. Nobody can. Meanwhile, Vortigern, the king, has all the men in the city taken to the sword in the stone in an attempt to remove it and find this true Born King. Backleg stumbles into Arthur's room, waking him up from his frequent nightmare of his father's death. Backleg informs Arthur, Sergeant Jack's story was not a lie. Greybeard is truly protected by the king. They quickly escape the king's blackleg soldier raid. At dawn, Arthur is able to evade capture, but is caught by soldiers who notice he doesn't have a brand for people who have tried to remove the sword from the stone. He is about the right age. He is thrown on a boat. They get to the sword in the stone. Arthur, impatient, skips the line, asks the soldier what he should do. They insult him, telling him to pull the sword. As they go back to chit-chatting, Arthur touches the sword. His dreams come flashing in broad daylight. A guard instructs him, both hands. Arthur, in front of the crowd, uses both hands. He removes the sword but is overwhelmed by its power and passes out. Guards, on seeing this, scramble to attack but are taken aback. Vortigern orders a raid on Arthur's brothel, finding his coffers, his hoard of gold accumulated over the years, and his records of soldiers in his pocket. He visits Arthur in his cell. Arthur begs, he has no interest in the throne, pleads to leave the kingdom and never come back. Vortigern informs Arthur the sword can only be drawn by Uther Pendragon or his direct heir. Vortigern explains Arthur's lineage. He will forever be a contender to his throne and will be prosecuted for his loot. Meanwhile, a mage presents herself to Uther's former general, Sir Bedivere, who immediately recognizes her. He had seen her in his dreams. She has been sent by Merlin and needs his help. A crowd of thousands gathers to see the true born king, planned to be executed. Vortigern brings Lucy in, kills her in an attempt to destabilize Arthur's morale, and threatens to kill his gang. Arthur is paraded, mocked, told to raise his sword and invoke the power of Excalibur as people watch. The mage creates a diversion with an eagle attacking the executioner. The mage can control all animals. As they disrupt the execution, they attack the guards, forcing the king to escape while Bedivere's men rescue Arthur as they jump into a large river. We see Arthur flirting with the mage. Getting hurt, he won't stop. The mage blindfolds him. Arthur is then taken to Bedivere's and the Resistance's hideout. Bedivere immediately accuses him of turning in Goosefat Bill. Arthur responds he chose the wrong place to hide, as Goosefat Bill reveals himself. Taken aback, they both accuse him of having a cozy relationship with the king's sergeants. Arthur demands to know why he was brought there. Bedivere asks what he wants. Arthur says he wants to get his life back, but he is sure they are not going to let him do that. They just lost 2 men trying to save him. He asks what they want from him. They inform him he has nowhere to go. His brothel was burned down days ago, but they are interested in what he can do with the sword. They then try to provoke him to fight with the sword. He starts a fight, then holds the sword with both hands. He is overwhelmed and falls to the ground. The mage persuades Bedivere to take Arthur to a realm called the Darklands, where he sees a vision of how the demon knight Vortigern killed his mother. He also witnesses his father sacrifice himself to save him and entomb the sword in stone made of his own body, making him realize that he is indeed the rightful king. Arthur learns Vortigern was responsible for persuading Mordred to kill the Mage King, and used his staff to unlock the dark forces to attack Camelot. Having grown jealous of Uther's popularity and wanting the throne for himself, Merlin stole the Mage King's staff and forged Excalibur. Merlin destroyed the Great Tower, gave the sword to the Lady of the Lake, who bound it to the Uther Pendragon bloodline. Vortigern rebuilt the Mage Tower to increase his own magical powers as he eradicated the Mage people. Vortigern, angry at General Massier, he had 1,000 soldiers, urges him to find Arthur. Meanwhile, in the caves, Blue Boy and his dad, Backleg, inform Arthur the kingdom has been turned upside down, and even the great General Massier is now on the street in search of him and the sword. Sergeant Jack has turned against them, giving the king a list of everything Arthur values. Arthur, angry, vows he is going to kill Vortigern. Backleg informs him that lots of people have been trying to do it for years, and he has waited a long time to see a man pull the sword. Arthur introduces his gang to the Resistance as they plan to take down Vortigern. Goosefat Bill informs them there are 12 barons representing the old founding of England. If they can get 6 of them, they can have at least 12,000 warriors. To stand a chance, they will need some of their support. Arthur tells them they don't need 12,000 men. All they need is the small size the rebels can offer. They need to be strategic. Vortigern cares about finishing his magical tower. They sink his barges carrying stone supply, disrupt the slave transportation route, cut off the brandy supplier to the palace, and burn Vortigern's favorite palace down. Vortigern strikes a new deal with Greybeard, offering 10,000 young boys under 12 years old as slaves, plus 5,000 more each year. The Vikings can continue to rule the north as long as they get safe passage through their seas. Greybeard, a little skeptical, brings up a rumor he has heard about the sword and the young king, saying he would be doing his king a disservice if he didn't ask. He is rebuked. Greybeard quickly apologizes as Vortigern summons his daughter and sets up a meeting with the 6 barons he dislikes. Arthur struggles to control the sword as the mage watches. Maggie informs the resistance that Vortigern, in 3 days, will travel by barge to visit the barons. They need to be careful. His power is increasing. They stage an ambush. The plan relies on a building 50 yards from the target, but the building's owner won't allow them. The other option is 75 yards away. Backleg says he's not capable of making that shot. They argue an arrow can't be accurate enough to kill the king. Bedivere brags that Goosefat Bill can make the shot. They set up a mock trial. He makes the shot. For some reason, Vortigern recognizes Maggie as an informant and plans to use it to his advantage. Vortigern sends out a decoy. Arthur spots it and calls it off, but Bedivere, anxious to kill Vortigern, orders Goosefat Bill to take the shot. Goosefat Bill acknowledges it's not Vortigern, but, eager to take out General Massier, kills another top soldier. They then leave the hideout. Soldiers discover their location. Stopped at a checkpoint, they quickly take out the soldiers. Backleg, injured, refuses to leave. The rebels try to escape the city as Rubio sacrifices himself. The mage escapes and informs Chinese George that Arthur needs his help. George helps by taking the rebels in. As the mage distracts the soldiers, the training ring is surrounded by Blackleg soldiers. Arthur opens an escape route and orders his men to escape. They refuse, insisting he go first. They all want to fight. Arthur gives in. The soldiers breach the gate. The fight begins. It's carnage. Arthur grabs his sword on seeing them attempting to kill the mage. He explodes, killing all the soldiers in one full swoop. The rebels and townspeople watch in amazement. As they finally escape, Blue Boy asks Arthur about his dad. Arthur informs him he was left wounded. Blue Boy runs off, finds his dad and helps him back to the hideout. Later, Backleg instructs Blue Boy to leave with Arthur, not knowing he is being tracked by the king's hound who noticed him earlier. The king finds the hideout. Backleg is at the mercy of the king. At the dock, Blue Boy refuses to abandon his father and runs back to the hideout. He meets the king trying to kill his father. He denies knowing him, but on the final attempt, he screams as the king cuts off Backleg's ear. Arthur comes in, trying to rescue Blue Boy. Backleg is killed. Arthur rescues Blue Boy and runs. The people revolt as the king escapes. Frustrated with the situation, Arthur attempts to throw the sword into a lake, but the Lady of the Lake returns it and shows him a vision of England's future under Vortigern's rule. Coming to terms with his responsibility, Arthur reunites with Bedivere, Goosefat Bill and Chinese George. He informs them they are going to take the castle through the front door. Chinese George should go to London to organise men. He then asks for the mage. Bedivere tells him she is back at the cave. They return to their cave hideout. However, because their captured man Rubio revealed its location under torture, the mage and Blue Boy have been captured and all other rebels killed. An emissary from Vortigern instructs Arthur to surrender that day at the castle. Bedivere brings the sword to Vortigern at the castle in exchange for the mage, indicating that Arthur is powerless without it. Arthur promises to surrender himself the next day in exchange for Blue Boy. Before riding to the castle, the mage injects him with special snake venom to protect him from a surprise attack she has in store. Arthur rides to the castle. Arthur finally confronts Vortigern. A giant snake invades the castle under the control of the mage. Arthur is brought to Vortigern. The snake tries to attack Vortigern but is killed. They then hear a loud rumble. A giant snake bursts the gate open, destroying the castle and taking out soldiers. Arthur sets himself free and reclaims his sword. Vortigern runs to the sirens, the moat hags. Bedivere infiltrates the castle and frees the slaves. As Bedivere's rebels begin their attack, the sirens ask for a new sacrifice. Vortigern kills his daughter, Princess Katia, to again become the Demon Knight. Arthur joins the fight, attacking the remaining Blackleg soldiers in a single swoop. The remaining soldiers, seeing this, surrender. Arthur follows Vortigern into the tower as he lays his daughter into the moat. Suddenly, the sword lights up, and the light transfers to the tower as the mage watches from a vantage point. The Demon Knight appears. The great fight for power begins. Vortigern is stronger. Bedivere, still fighting on the outskirts of the castle, runs into the castle dungeon and finds Maggie imprisoned. Arthur, knocked out, has a vision of his father passing the sword of Excalibur to him, the part of his dream he always didn't want to see. He wakes up determined. Telling Vortigern he once asked to know what gave him so much drive. It was him, Vortigern. He put him in the brothel, cut him on the street. He is here now because of him. Renewed, Arthur fights fearlessly with all his might, defeats and kills Vortigern. As Vortigern dies, Arthur consoles him and leaves his body behind. As his magical tower falls, Bedivere and the now rescued Maggie watch. After reclaiming his rightful throne, Arthur knights his friends and begins construction on his round table. Greybeard demands he honor the agreement made by his predecessor to his king. They expect to leave with 10,000 young slaves. Arthur refuses. Greybeard threatens Arthur, reminding him of his king's fleet of 3,000 ships surrounding his kingdom. Arthur refuses again, orders Greybeard to kneel before England and show his respect. Bedivere knights the gang, including Chinese George. Greybeard kneels. Arthur then invites him to eat. Goosefat Bill and Sir Williams officially knight Arthur king. Blue Boy becomes the crown bearer. Bedivere, in front of the kingdom, crowns Arthur.